bandwagon. So when people come in and say, how do I push restart? How do I get back on the ketogenic diet? The first thing I like to point out is this natural trend that you find when you are on a ketogenic diet. So find what step they're on. And again, as I've been writing the chapters of this book saying, how can you say, all right, I did well for a while, I fell off, and I really need help getting either to the next level or back on this game again. What I like folks to do is to look at what step they're on. These are the natural steps that I see as patients learn about a ketogenic diet, and then they march through to one of these steps. So this is really tiny writing, but hang in there. The first phase that we see people at is they eat every couple of hours. 2 to 4 hours is very common before the ketogenic diet. If you've read the book, I talk about lowering carbs to 20 or less per day, and within 10 days of doing that, they start to eat further apart. Even if you say nothing to them, if I teach them about this, they kind of watch for it. And some people resist it. They're like, no, I've always eaten this way. And I'm like, try to just listen to your body. But what naturally happens when you go from a high carbohydrate or a standard American diet to a ketogenic diet is the satiety is much stronger, and your hunger really is less. It is about a 6 to 8 interval that they go between meals, and it sets in about the second week. Now, some people never get out of this next phase, and I've learned that is a sign they're probably not keto adapted. This number 3, I love listening for this in my support group as we go around and we talk about some of the highs or lows that we've had over the week of keto. This past couple of weeks we talked about temptations and some of the ways to say no to temptations, and then some of those people that sabotage you. So there was a few folks that accidentally miss a meal. And when they say that in group, my brain instantly says, oh, they're keto adapted. And what that means chemically is your liver is producing ketones every day. That production of ketones is a supply from fat. When you first go on the ketogenic diet, when you first go from a standard American diet to the ketogenic diet, you really can't make that level of ketones steadily. You'll kind of do it in waves. That system is very used to burning glucose. Those first few days, we really like those carbs to actually be as close to 0 as you can get them. I say 20 or less because people are figuring out what is a carbohydrate. But the longer you're on the ketogenic diet, that becomes this easy thing where you now understand that has carbohydrates in it and that doesn't. But if they can go to 0, they start producing a trickle of ketones. And not until about that 6th, 7th, 8th day do you start to see that they are producing a steady amount. It takes an even more robust level of ketones in your circulation to suppress the appetite, where one day they say, we went to the ER, I had this problem. That would be my story. I'm sorry. I got taken to the ER, got distracted, had a busy day, and really forgot to eat. I'll tell you, before the ketogenic diet, it would only be on a rare time in the last decade that I would have forgotten to eat. I find that patients that forget to eat, I would have significant cause to think about prior to studying the ketogenic diet. Standard American diet, that is not normal to forget to eat. Those cravings for food show up every 2 to 4 hours. The next phase that I ask patients to go to after they say, gosh, for the first time in my life, I missed a meal and I didn't even notice, the next thing I ask them to do is plan for that. Go to step 4, which is reduce your meals to twice a day and make that your option. This is going to be really important when we talk about Jim's story in a minute. Twice a day meals are not that uncommon. If you go back over the history of mankind, twice a day meals are not. 3 times a day is our American traditional standard, but I would contend that that's probably not evolutionarily the best way for us as adults to eat. So once they get to keto adapted, I push them to say, plan to only eat 2. The next step that I ask them to do is that they push all of their calories, so those 2 meals, to happen within an 8-hour window. Now, this is not always easy for patients. This can really be unsettling for them at first to say, how do I put them all in 8 windows? For the first time, as I'm walking through rules and behaviors, I'll talk about calories. Usually I've not talked about calories to this point. And in the timeline of patients, this is usually at the end of that first month or maybe between the first and second month of being keto. I tell them that if you have bulletproof coffee, that's great, but that's the beginning of your 8 hours of eating. Those are calories going in, and we don't talk a lot about calories here. I don't want you to get too distracted by them, but when you do a 16-8, all of the calories and all of the sweeteners go into the 8 hours, and 16 hours of the day is spent without any calories, just salt and water. So this was difficult for me too. I was a huge cream in my coffee kind of gal, and so that first hour of eating was always when I got up and had my cup of coffee. The next step that I like folks to go to is to make their morning drink, whatever that is that they drink in the morning, calorie-free and sweetener-free. So the coffee becomes black, the tea becomes black. And I will be honest, this sounds like a horrible idea if you're new to keto. I was probably a year into keto before I was willing to say, okay, I could probably go without that cream in the coffee in the morning. Part of it was this comfort of taste. I love the taste of it. But honestly, there's some really good coffees out there that I now have learned to love that too. You will train your palate. I have a couple of really good stories that end up in the book about training your palate versus those that refuse to train their palate. You will adapt. As we go, those are the first 6 steps, but the 7th step gets into, this is going to be really important when we talk about Jim's story in a minute. We have something called OMAD, and if you haven't heard of that, it stands for 1 meal a day. What I like patients to also think about is I've had people on OMAD, and they're a 24, meaning they have 20 hours of the day that they're fasting and 4 hours of the day when they're eating, but they call it OMAD. And so I want you to be careful that OMAD in my chemistry book is about 1 meal, and it should not take you more than an hour to eat that meal. So OMAD, 1 meal a day, means all of those calories sneak in between that 1 hour. So that means black coffee before this. Fasting teas are really important during this time. There's no bone broth during the rest of it. I'm telling you, that has calories in it. Keep that out of your 23 hours, put them into the 1 hour. Now, it doesn't mean you have to do this, but when you're really reaching to perfect the skill, 1 meal a day gets as limited into that 1 hour of feeding time as possible. I have lots of people that eat 1 meal a day. I have a patient, Jerry, who does a great job, has had some really great teachable moments, patients writing in saying, Jerry's case has taught me so much. And Jerry has 1 meal every other day, and the rest of the time he has a small amount of bone broth that's really salty. And again, that's really important for Jerry. Jerry checks his numbers before and after he does that, and we know that he doesn't have much of an insulin response to that small amount of bone broth. He is very conscious to make it a salty broth, and that's also important for Jerry's health as well. All right, so the next level, again, you're trying to figure out where are you at, or when you fell off of the keto wagon, where did you end up at? Because number 8 is what I call advanced OMAD. Now, I've had people say, I think her OMAD, where you only get 1 hour to put the calories in, is already advanced. But the super advanced, if you would, OMAD is 23-1, meaning 23 hours of the day, there are no calories. 1 hour of the day is where the calories come from. But you have to have also no calories 12 hours before sunrise. So this is important as you look at the chemistry and what's happening with most people who've been overweight for a long time. The two people that I'm going to talk about on the show tonight both have morning sugars that are elevated. They're not awful, but they're enough elevated that I know the morning cortisol is acting like a meal. So their brain signals that the sun is about to rise, and it sends cortisol from their pituitary gland to their liver. As that signal gets to the liver is so full of stored sugar that so much sugar comes out of storage that you don't have to eat a bite. There is enough sugar in your blood to count as a meal. And that's why this advanced OMAD is super important to figure out, that you put all of those calories into 1 hour of day, and that you also clean up, that you pick the hour of the day that you're going to eat, starts at sunrise and needs to be done by the time 12 hours is up. So there's a 12-hour zone before sunrise. So sunrise here is about 6 o'clock. So that would be 6 o'clock. There is no calories that go in. I think this is very powerful for what happens to most people. And when I see people get stuck or in a place that they're not losing weight, they've got some numbers that teach me about what they're up to, but they don't really appreciate why am I stalled? Why isn't this working? Why did I stop feeling as good as I used to? And this is one of those places that's kind of a hidden part of this chemistry shift. And again, you don't have to worry about this if you're the first 2 weeks on keto. I like patients to steadily progress through these stages. But before I introduce number 9, and this will be important also when we talk about what happened to Jim, before you advance to number 9, which is a 36-hour fast, they have to have normal blood pressures, meaning they can't be dipping down. If they're on blood pressure medications, I will have them hold the blood pressure medications during step number 9. My diabetics must beware. If you are on glucose-lowering medications, and if you're a diabetic, you should know what those are. Metformin is not a glucose-lowering medication. Now, yes, it improves glucose regulation, but it doesn't suppress it through an insulin-like process. Insulin secretagogues are your glipizide, they act like insulin. So if you're on insulin, a 36-hour fast, you need to be hand in hand with your physician. If you take medications that lower blood sugar through a stimulation of insulin, you need to be careful. This has to be done with your physician, or you're going to hurt yourself. And I've seen that with patients who've really tried to push to the next level, and that's what this is. The next level is a 36-hour fast. I walk people, that sounds like a long time, like, oh my goodness, I can't possibly imagine that. But if you map it out and you say, okay, if you are getting to step 9, you've already figured out how to spend 23 hours of the day not eating. And this sounds really goofy to folks who have never done it, but as you become keto adapted, it is easier and easier and easier to do this. But the 36-hour fast, you can hack it a little bit, that most of the time, 16 of those hours, you can spend sleeping. So you're really only saying no to food for about 20 hours. So I tell people, eat your supper, get nice and full, do not skimp on that meal, a nice satiating meal, and then go to bed. The next morning you're going to wake up, it is black coffee, it is water, salt only. Those are the perfect fasts. As you've seen with Jerry and several other folks that I've guided on this show, we have exceptions. I mean, that's the perfect fast, is salt and water. But adding BHB to my circulation when I'm having a crappy day and I feel yucky on a fast, I call it failing upwards. Sure, a perfect fast of salt and water would be great. But if I get close with a addition of some BHB or a little bone broth, both of those are very good. It's not the perfect fast, but it's better than failing, than eating. So I really encourage you to have salt crystals in your pocket that day. If you've never done this, I'm not talking about like 1 or 2 little shakes of a salt. I'm talking about, so I have this little bin that one of my patients gave me, and it is an old salt bin. I don't know if you can see the salt in there, but I will literally put the salt on my tongue like that when I'm fasting, because it flushes my mouth with saliva, but at the same time, any craving for food is evaporated. But it's not just a sprinkle of salt. You need to really put salt on your tongue like that. That is what it looks like to suppress your appetite through salt. And it is super important to have that around on your first 36-hour fast. Whew, that's a lot of salt. The next morning, you awaken. So you get through that whole day. Be careful to stay away from the snacking. Some of the first successes that I had getting through a 72-hour fast, which is coming up, was finding those things in the evening that were comforting to me, but that were not filled with temptation. Like my husband and I like to go to movies, but there better not be popcorn around. I can do it now, but I couldn't do it then. I was like, oh my goodness, this is evil. I cannot do it. All right, so number 10 is a 48-hour fast, and then number 11 is a 72-hour fast. Okay, so what am I telling you this for? This is this natural progression of what happens to patients when they have a ketogenic chemistry that's advancing. And when they've fallen off the wagon, when things haven't gone well, I like them to look at this list and say, where did you get to? And you can usually find them. Some people said, I've never restricted my calories to 8 hours a day. Maybe I missed a meal every once in a while, but I really was stuck between 4 and 5. But looking to see where you can go, and then careful not to jump over one of these numbers, because it's a chemistry set that we're working with. Each of these chemistry sets is an advancement of the previous one.
Please subscribe to my channel. And don't forget to click the notification bell so you don't miss out on any new videos. Stay tuned.